Hey guys, Willie and Murfitt here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. This is part 5 of the rear radius arm and rear suspension, rear subframe rebuild. So let's get into it. Okay, so in the previous episode, I unveiled the freshly painted and prepped parts. So what I'm going to do today is to start, hopefully, getting things put together. Now, I'm going to struggle a little bit with the radius arms because the bench vise I've got is over there and I can't quite get to it. So I'm going to start by rebuilding the hubs and hopefully clean up a few parts. I've managed to lay out all the bits that I need for this one side. So I've laid out all the bits that I need for the one side. So I guess bring you in and show you exactly what I've got and what's going where.
Right, I must apologise for the light because, well, it's quite nice out today. Radius arms obviously rebuilt. I've got the wheel nuts. I've got the flexi hose retaining clips, nuts, the flexi hose, new springs, the handbrake lever pin, the locking nut for the drum. I've got my rear radius arm rebuild kit. I've got some wheel cylinder adjusters, or some rear brake shoe adjusters, handbrake lever, rear wheel cylinder, rear wheel bearing, knuckle. I've got this adjustable high-low, new brake pads or brake shoes, new bush kit, new bolts for the back plate, new bolts for the radius arms to get mounted onto the subframe, new trunnion, some washers, and the last piece of the puzzle is this handbrake lever, which I'm going to hopefully clean up and give a fresh coat of paint. It's nice and free, which is fantastic. You can probably see how loose it is. And that's brilliant for obviously working the handbrake back and forth. But yeah, that's the kits, and what I'm going to do today is look and fit in these wheel bearings into this hub. Now, we didn't go for Timken, and the reason is that I've had these fitted previously, and actually I find them really good. I've never had these fail on me, especially for the rears. And for the cost of them, it's worth fitting something like this. These are a classic wheel bearing kit from Old School Minis, and obviously the radius arm. I think actually everything came from Old School Minis pretty much. So yeah, that's the reason why I'm not going to be fitting Timkens, because I'm happy with these. So the rear hub has been coated and it's also been cleaned out, and there isn't anything inside here, which is fantastic. So it means that we've got a fresh hub to work with. Let's take the kit out and have a look what we've got. So we've got a dust seal, some grease, and also the inner and outer races, and a new split pin. So the dust seal itself goes on the inside, and on the outside you've got a, I think possibly this spacer or this washer, and then a hub nut which is here. The bearings have got an inner and outer race. So the inner race gets put into the hub, and then the inner race obviously sits in, or the outer race sits in, and that creates your obviously bearing motion. So I'll use an old bearing to push these in. Excellent.
Okay, so let's get you closer in again.
So what we're looking for here is a nice join between the shiny surface and the surface underneath. Nice and flat. And make sure that is consistent all the way around, which it is. Once that's done, flip it over and do the other side.
So again, just to make sure that inner race is lined up with the lip in the middle, which it is. You can flip it over. And the old race that I use can be punched out. There you go. So now in theory, these can just get placed in. But what I want to do first is lubricate them up, because otherwise they'll get hot and worn down very quickly. Okay, so next up I'm going to use this grease. Now it says CV grease, but it is ideal for CV joints, universal joints and wheel bearings. So if I can get into it, there you go. So it's quite a dark grease, but what I'm going to do is take it in my fingers and put a dollop on the bearing and then work it around the bearing. But whilst I'm working it around the bearing, I want to try and force it up into the in between the rollers. You do that by sort of pushing your finger onto the rollers and wiping up. Now there are some fantastic tools you can buy to do this much easier, where you basically just push the bearing down onto the application and it squirts grease into it and actually fills that bearing up. Now that is on my wish list, but like all things, there's other things that I need to do that are priority than getting a bearing greaser. So just working my way all the way around it, making sure that the gap in between the inner race and the outer race of this bearing is actually, you can see the grease sort of oozing up through the gaps. And then you just basically you rub your finger through it in between the rollers and the grease goes in between and squirts inside there. So once I'm happy I've got enough grease on this bearing, take a little bit and rub it on the inner race as well, just to make life a little bit easier. And then I can plop my bearing down onto that race. Clean my hands up a little bit, because the next job is to seat that. So on the bush, you want the flat side outwards, and then the inside is the in, or the open side looking in. And you can locate a lot of this by hand, and then just give it a bit of a... Right, that's located. I'll flip it over. Work on the other side now. Right, so the washer wasn't the black one, it was this silver one. And then the nut, and then on top goes that hubcap. I'm going to put that to one side because I'm not quite ready to install that just yet. But that is another job done. So I've got to do that to obviously the other side as well, but we're going to do focus on one side at a time. Ugh. That is a really mucky job. As the end of this episode, if you have enjoyed the content, please hit the thumbs up button, comment down below, and if you can, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. The next instalment will be coming very soon. Take it easy guys, see you next time. I guess next up, I should probably focus on trying to get these new bearings in.